Nebraska exhibits a pronounced distinction between leaders born within the state and those born outside it across multiple domains of authority. Elected positions in state and local government consistently favor individuals born in Nebraska, reflecting patterns of district-based representation and local accountability. This native dominance appears in the highest statewide offices as well as legislative and judicial roles, where birthplace aligns with voter expectations of familiarity with regional issues such as agriculture and rural-urban balance. In contrast, appointed or nationally recruited positions in higher education and federal agencies demonstrate a systematic inclusion of non-Nebraska-born leaders, driven by institutional demands for specialized expertise unavailable or less prevalent among local candidates. The analysis reveals that political leadership maintains near-total Nebraska-born representation in core elected structures, including recent governors and U.S. senators. Statewide executives and congressional delegates born in Nebraska shape policy, with direct ties to the state's demographic and economic realities. Legislative bodies and judicial institutions follow the same pattern, with overwhelming majorities of members exhibiting Nebraska birth or lifelong residency. Municipal leadership in major cities shows slight variation yet still tilts heavily toward natives, with only isolated cases of external origins. These structures prioritize grassroots legitimacy and shared cultural foundations over external credentials. Higher education and federal operations function as primary conduits for non-Nebraska-born individuals to assume prominent roles. University system presidents and chancellors, along with presidents of independent colleges, frequently originate from other states or countries, selected through processes that emphasize national talent pools. Federal agency directors and administrators similarly arrive via career rotations or appointments that transcend state boundaries. This duality creates a hybrid leadership model in which native-born figures control democratic institutions while external leaders influence specialized sectors, raising questions about the balance between local cohesion and imported capabilities. Political leadership in Nebraska. Statewide elected offices underscore the prevalence of Nebraska-born individuals in positions of direct public accountability. Recent governors trace their origins to Nebraska communities, with executive authority exercised by figures rooted in the state's agricultural and civic traditions. United States senators from Nebraska similarly emerge from in-state birthplaces, maintaining continuity in federal representation that reflects long-term residency and voter familiarity. Congressional representatives demonstrate the same pattern in 2 of 3 current seats, where Nebraska birth correlates with district-specific advocacy on issues central to the state's identity. The unicameral legislature and Supreme Court extend this native orientation through structural mechanisms that favor local candidates. District elections for legislative seats produce assemblies composed almost entirely of Nebraska-born or lifelong residents, ensuring that lawmaking remains anchored in shared regional experiences. Judicial appointments and elections yield a court whose members possess deep Nebraska roots, with professional trajectories confined to the state's legal system. This configuration minimizes external influence in core governance functions and reinforces institutional stability derived from common birthplace ties. Mayoral positions in the state's largest cities further illustrate the pattern, though with limited exceptions that highlight urban variability. The current mayor of the largest metropolitan area was born and raised in Nebraska, continuing a tradition of local leadership. Preceding officeholders occasionally include individuals born elsewhere, yet the overall composition of top 10 city mayors favors natives. Smaller municipalities align even more closely with in-state origins, producing administrations attuned to localized concerns. Collectively, these political roles establish a baseline of Nebraska-born dominance that contrasts sharply with patterns observed in non-elective sectors. Higher education leadership patterns. The University of Nebraska system exemplifies the concentration of non-Nebraska-born leaders in executive academic positions. The system president originates from New York, while chancellors at multiple campuses hail from Tennessee, Hong Kong via Canada, and Nigeria. Only one campus chancellor among the primary institutions demonstrates clear Nebraska birth. This distribution positions external leaders at the helm of the state's flagship public higher education network, overseeing research, enrollment, and resource allocation across 4 distinct campuses. Independent and state colleges outside the University of Nebraska system mirror this reliance on non-native presidents. Creighton University maintains Nebraska-born leadership at the presidential level, yet neighboring private institutions such as Nebraska Wesleyan University and Concordia University Nebraska feature presidents born in other Midwestern states or with careers developed externally. Doane University and Hastings College retain Nebraska-born presidents, while Midland University, Peru State College, and College of St. Mary operate under leaders recruited from out-of-state backgrounds. Public state colleges including Chadron State, Wayne State, and Peru State display a mixed composition, with recent appointments often favoring national candidates. Recent presidencies at these institutions reinforce the pattern of external recruitment. Preceding leaders at Chadron State College and Nebraska Wesleyan University arrived from outside Nebraska, with career paths rooted in other regional or national academic environments. Similar transitions at Midland University and additional private colleges involved hires whose prior experience lay beyond state boundaries. The cumulative effect establishes higher education as a consistent entry point for non-Nebraska-born executives, distinct from the native dominance evident in elected political offices. Mechanisms of educational leader selection. Governing boards composed predominantly of Nebraska natives or long-term residents authorize the appointment of non-Nebraska-born presidents and chancellors. The University of Nebraska Board of Regents consists of elected members with deep state ties who conduct national searches for system leadership. The Nebraska State College System Board of Trustees, appointed by the governor and staffed by Nebraska alumni and community leaders, follows comparable procedures for its three institutions. Private college boards similarly draw from Nebraska-based alumni and business figures, yet routinely endorse external candidates. Search criteria focus on specialized credentials including success in securing major research grants, demonstrated fundraising records, accreditation management experience, enrollment expansion strategies, and prior emphasis on diversity and inclusion initiatives. These qualifications guide the evaluation of candidates during national recruitment phases, prioritizing measurable institutional outcomes over purely local academic or community attributes. Boards articulate these priorities in formal leadership profiles that shape the composition of applicant pools and final selections. The resulting appointments integrate external expertise into Nebraska institutions, while the boards themselves remain anchored in state origins. This arrangement allows Nebraska-born board members to direct the selection of leaders born elsewhere, creating a deliberate pathway for non-native influence within publicly governed and privately supported higher education. The process operates uniformly across the University of Nebraska system and the network of independent and state colleges, embedding external leadership as a structural feature rather than an anomaly. Search processes for higher education leadership. The standard search process for university and college presidents in Nebraska begins with the governing board appointing a search committee that includes board members, faculty, staff, students, and alumni. Professional executive search firms assist in developing a leadership profile based on institutional needs and stakeholder input. National advertising and targeted outreach generate applicant pools that extend well beyond state boundaries, with screening conducted through confidential reviews to protect candidates' current positions. Semi-finalists and finalists undergo sequential interviews, often in neutral locations before campus visits and public forums. Nebraska law mandates a 30-day public vetting period for priority candidates in public institutions, during which community feedback is solicited prior to final board approval. The entire sequence typically spans 6 to 12 months and concludes with board ratification of the selected leader. Private institutions follow analogous steps without the statutory public comment requirement, yet adhere to the same national orientation. Closed or confidential elements within these searches limit full transparency regarding the breadth of candidates considered. The emphasis on specialized administrative metrics shapes the final selections, directing boards toward leaders whose records align with grant acquisition, enrollment targets, and external funding goals. This methodology, applied consistently by Nebraska native-dominated boards, sustains the inflow of non-Nebraska-born presidents and chancellors across both public and private sectors. Federal agency integration and associated criticisms. Federal agencies maintain offices in Nebraska with directors and primary administrators frequently born outside the state. The FBI field office in Omaha operates under leadership drawn from national career pipelines rather than local origins. Additional agencies, including the United States Attorney's Office, Strategic Command at Offutt Air Force Base, Veterans Affairs Health System, and regional USDA components follow comparable staffing practices. These roles involve rotations and appointments designed to import specialized federal expertise independent of state birthplace. Criticisms center on the relocation of non-native federal employees into Nebraska without established local ties. Such movements introduce personnel whose formative experiences and professional networks lie elsewhere, potentially diminishing alignment with state-specific cultural and social norms. The influx affects community relationships by establishing a transient class of administrators whose decision-making may reflect national priorities over localized concerns. Further critiques highlight the capacity of these staffing patterns to influence demographic composition and social cohesion within the state. Federal rotations bring individuals and families whose backgrounds differ from Nebraska's predominant rural and conservative character, altering interpersonal dynamics in agency-adjacent communities. This process operates without direct state oversight, positioning federal structures as mechanisms that embed external perspectives into Nebraska's operational landscape and challenge the cohesion derived from native leadership in elected domains. In conclusion, Nebraska's leadership configuration juxtaposes native-born dominance in elected political roles with systematic incorporation of non-Nebraska-born figures in higher education and federal positions. Elected structures preserve local accountability through consistent birthplace patterns among governors, legislators, judges, and mayors. Educational and federal sectors, however, function as deliberate access points that introduce external leaders selected for specialized credentials rather than in-state origins. This division produces a hybrid system in which Nebraska natives control democratic institutions while external talent populates specialized executive and administrative functions. Governing boards staffed by Nebraska natives authorize national searches that prioritize fundraising, research grants, enrollment strategies, and accreditation expertise. These processes, applied uniformly across public and private institutions, generate the observed leadership patterns without altering the native composition of the boards themselves. Federal agencies extend the pattern through career rotations that relocate non-native directors into state offices, embedding national frameworks within Nebraska operations. The resulting leadership distribution reflects institutional choices that favor external capabilities over exclusive reliance on local birth or residency. The arrangement sustains ongoing questions about the prioritization of administrative metrics versus academic focus, community cohesion, and student-centered outcomes in higher education. Criticisms of federal integration similarly address the erosion of social relationships and cultural continuity introduced by non-native staffing. Nebraska therefore embodies a state in which birthplace dynamics delineate spheres of influence, with elected legitimacy resting on native foundations and specialized sectors operating through imported leadership selected by local boards and national federal protocols. This model shapes the state's institutional evolution and merits continued examination for its effects on long-term governance and societal integration.